Service level agreement, some of the elements would be that the scope of work to specify tasks to be done, specific task. One example would be in our lighting. We out-task our lighting replacement, okay, to a third party. So part of their statement of work is what do they do with the light bulbs after they remove them. One of the first things we do is clean the lenses. You ever notice all the bugs in the lenses? So there's nothing that bugs me the worst, that bothers me the worst, right, is you go in and replace the lights in the fixture, but they never clean the fixture. They put the fixture right back up to how it was. I mean, at least I know which ones the lights went out because I saw the clean fixtures, one indication. But that's going to be part of your statement of work, okay? Level of service that defines the expected minimums. At a minimum, we're going to at least wipe the lens down with water. Not just with a dry cloth, with water. Something's going to take the dust away. Okay, that's going to be the minimum. Another attribute would be some sort of lens cleaner would be better, okay, and then put it back up. Also inspect the ballast in the wiring. You know, is it functional? Is there any type of, I would consider, known failures in regards to the ballast or the wiring or even the switch, okay, for that matter. Measurements or metrics. Remember the key performance indicators, KPIs? So the level of service is, as soon as I get a light replacement call, it's actually, one, documented, and then it's scheduled, and it's scheduled, say, within the next 24 hours. I don't really have any lighting that's considered an emergency, so we'll give it 24 hours to get through the cycle, okay? Other items, if it's a water leak, that's a little bit different. That may constitute an emergency. So in that particular one, maybe within, say, a 4-hour period or maybe even a 6-hour period. Okay. Oversight measures. What do you think that means, oversight measures? It's like a waiver clause or something? What do you think? Oversight measures. Maybe the unforeseens. Okay. There's some facilities, I'm not going to mention which, still have asbestos wiring. And these are in fixtures that have been in for 50 years. And they've been working fine up till now until someone actually goes up to replace that fixture. So some of the oversight measures would be, whoops, you know, we got some remediation issues here. So that now escalates to that next level. So of course that could be known as a hazard. Okay. You know, I need to bring, not asbestos, but some of my, I carry around this, what I call my junk box. And this junk box has all kinds of components in it that's failed. Everything from valves to pipes to sprinkler heads to 600 amp disconnect panels that are melted in a big glob. I'm going to try to remember to bring that. It's a big old suitcase. It's pretty heavy. I need a dolly to bring it in. But really, I use that as show and tell when I request funding from finance for capital. So I'll kind of dig through my junk box and find the one that looks the worst and put it in a baggie. And then I'll kind of take it up with me to kind of lobby my cause. Sometimes it works, okay? Yeah, scare tactics, okay? Incentives for achieving goals beyond minimums, okay? Other ones could be, you know, some sort of reward mechanism or maybe extending the contract. Remember we talked about quantitative measures? I hit a certain level, say I'm hitting 98%. I did that consistently for my entire contract. And then part of the wording in the contract would be that I'll roll the contract over. So it's an incentive for the provider as well as it is for facilities. Okay. Work schedules of the resources and personnel. And then the last component on there would be the standard operating procedures. And that's really your job plans, your job task and how they plan to execute that and carry it out. For example, we've got a jockey pump at my site, and the jockey pump is tested annually. And what we do is we actually measure the flow of water coming out of the jockey pump to ensure that it is, one, pumping the amount, GPM, at the velocity, at the pressure that it's been intended for. So part of the standard operating procedure is how they test that, because I have to turn that into my service, my insurance provider. And I also have to turn that into the underwriters. So what they look at, that jockey pump, is like, okay, General Dynamics, we got all your documentation. It is running at 150 pounds PSI. It is flowing, you know, your 1,000 gallons a minute, whatever it is. Okay? And you did have it tested on this particular day. So part of the procedures is they note everything down in their particular form. They turn that over to facilities We make a duplicate or scan it, and then we send it off to the insurance carrier. Okay. Service level agreement specifics. So this is just an outline. You would have very much like your business case, introduction, statement of work, what are you going to do it for. Really, it's a real nice guideline. Quality performance, what do you expect? What's my expectations of this particular provider? Okay. What's clean? That's another question I get all the time. What's considered clean? Most of you are probably out of the house. But you're not too far out that you haven't remembered when you were a teenager, right? And your parent says, well, I want you to clean up your room. So you go in and you straighten your room up, right? So your room looks straightened up to you, but they come in and says, you didn't do anything in here. This place is a mess. But you say, but it's clean. The interpretation is what's clean to you, which is clean to your parents, are too big. I've got a 16-year-old son, is the reason I bring this up. So when I ask my 16-year-old son to clean up the bathroom, he considers cleaning up the bathroom as flushing the toilet and just taking the trash and putting it into the trash receptacle, and that's it. It's clean. My daughter, who shares the same bathroom, clean to her is scrubbing the counters, the tub, the shower, everything, the curtains, you name it, fluffing the towels and everything else. So two different interpretations. So if I was to give that job, I'd probably give it to my daughter, not my son. Okay? Now, yard work's a little bit different. When I ask my daughter to go sweep the patio, I don't ask her to sweep the patio in the summertime anymore because that never works. So my son will go out and do it. So he'll take all the patio furniture out, move it around, and sweep everything underneath it and collect everything. Except his only flaw, he never picks up the trash that he swept up. So he leaves it in a nice pile until the wind comes again, and it spreads it all over the back patio again. So there's some expectations here that I could probably get some service level agreement right established, but good luck in getting me right. So they'd probably say, we got rights, Dad, from you doing this. So one of those items is, what is the quality of performance? What's my expectations? You want to document that, note that. Safety concerns, communications, escalation. Some cases, exception or conflict resolution management. We're not agreeing eye to eye on the expectations. I don't feel you're performing. We feel we're performing. So somewhere we got to meet in the middle and then discuss this and come up with an equal medium. Pricing, terms, incentives, and penalties, legal compliance. Reasons for contract termination. Obligation to let the provider know why the contract's being terminated. There's got to be a reason why, and there's got to be some sort of escalation. This is your first warning, second written warning, okay, before it actually is canceled. And then at the very last, like any other contract, it's going to require signatures from both parties, both the provider, okay, and the customer. Here's determining on what to contract. So if I'm looking at here from a low to high and required expertise and relevance to mission, if it's very low, okay, I'm trying to think of a very low item. Let me see. Pallets. I'll bring pallets back up again. Pallets would probably be in this quadrant. Required expertise to pick up the pallets other than stacking them where they don't fall on somebody. And the relevance to my mission for my business operations is probably pretty low. If I have a whole stack of pallets, it's not going to shut the business down unless it catches on fire. Hopefully not, okay? Now, how about if I spun this around and I had a data center? A service provider that provided my UPS maintenance on my data center. Where would that be in this quadrant? So I'd probably here related to mission, extremely high, right? And then expertise, that X and this X, well, that X there would probably be in this quadrant here. So would I have to have a different type of service level agreement? Probably something that's a little bit more detailed, right? Probably has some more substance to it in regards of what's my obligations and what's the recourse if the services are not performed. Pallets, I can always go out and secure another pallet provider within 24 hours if I needed to. But data centers is a little bit different. So we'll use this matrix just to determine what's the relevance between the two, if it's low, medium, or high. So it kind of gives us an indication at what level of service and what type of provider we're going to look for. Okay? And determining what to contract, some factors to consider would be relevance to the facility mission. If it's extremely critical, okay, I would probably choose to keep that in-house, just for the sake that I have management control and oversight over the resources. So I will probably keep that in-house. Some examples would be my electrical systems. If it's not new construction or tenant improvements, but it's service, I will probably tend to keep that in-house because it's regular routine items, maintenance items that happen on a regular basis. And I have the same crew that does it all the time. So I build consistency, and it's reliable. Okay?
Do you mean by electrical, like pulling wire?
No, these would be things like, if I got a trip breaker, they go back and find a source where the short is. Another item would be servicing lights, ballasts. Some cases pulling wire, like for evac systems. Primarily, we do all our controls within, other than the actual materials and products, we buy those. But in those particular ones, we basically conduct all our energy management. So we'll install the conduit, we'll pull the wire and for our evac horns, and then we'll have Siemens basically come in and just provide us the components for that. But if it's a TI, say it's a renovation, I would typically bid out that portion of the TI to electrical contractor. Then they'll pull the wire, bend the conduit, install it. And then what we do as the final commissioning is my electrical team, in-house team, will go through and conduct their inspections. And then after it's been turned over, then they take over the PMs and so on that infrastructure. Would be a good question. Okay. The level of control, okay, would be another one to determine the contract, to contract or not to contract. What level of control do I want to keep? If it has to be very tight control, I'm more likely want to keep that within my in-house resources. Okay. Service specialties or very uniqueness, we had conversations on that. Water treatment, I was surprised that ASU has their own water treatment, but it works for them. I don't have the resources at General Dynamics to do that. So our particulars, we outsource those to a company that provides that. Okay. Speed or service response. In some cases, outtasking, I've got access to a multitude of resources and also materials and access to expertise that I may not have in-house. So in those particular ones, I would choose to outsource that particular segment of facilities operations. Years and years ago, we used to have an in-house janitorial crew. This is about 25 years ago. Huge crew, about 80 janitors, all reported into facilities. But if you consider the overhead that's included in the fringes and benefits, it became awfully costly after a while to keep doing that. But again, that's how the evolution has changed within facilities management and the operations realm. Productivity and oversight requirements, and then the total cost of service. Okay, at what level do we want to provide this? Is that everything that we want to provide it bundled, or do we want to strand it? Okay, in regards to the total cost of service. Okay, and assigning contracts or staff assignments. So, some of the commons would be determine the estimated hours required for staff to acquire knowledge, materials, and equipment and compatibility. Whenever I bring in a new contractor, there's always what I consider that learning curve. They have to get to know the facility, they have to get to know the systems, and especially the customers. So I have to compensate for that. Other item would be determine the potential add-ons to costs, okay, concerns such as delays to other tasks. Accessing certain portions of my facility is one item that is always an issue, always a concern, because we're a closed facility. So you just can't walk into any room. So when you have a contract service, part of the SLA, service level agreement, is after a certain wait time, and then they're on the clock. So from a facility standpoint, I have to make sure that that's scheduled for that particular technician to have access into that room or that piece of equipment. Okay, downtime, errors and rework is going to be another consideration. Who's going to be responsible for that? Okay. If it's an item that was called out in the specifications and it failed, and then basically that's going to be a burden of the owner. If it was the maybe experience or the type of selection that they provided, and then that could be considered a rework, okay, situation. And the last one, compare all recognized cost concerns to the negotiated contractor fee. Some of the contract fees that you'll see is everything ranging from a supervisor with a truck, so I'm paying the overhead for the vehicle, the fuel, the insurance, the registration, and all the other type of maintenance associated with that particular pickup. So what I try to do is try to negotiate everything with minimized supervisor overhead. So if I can have a supervisor that can drive their own vehicle to the site, it saves me money overall. The only item that I have problems on that is that a lot of the folks use their trucks as a service vehicle. So I'm obligated to pay the additional cost because part of the service truck, they have all the materials to perform either the repair or the maintenance, okay, component requirement on that. Other ones could be different tiers, right? You got your journeyman, you got your apprentice, right? Okay, depending on the application. What other type of fee structures do you think we would see within a service level agreement? Any ideas, any thoughts come to mind?
Standard hours, overtime.
Yeah, right. Service calls would be another one. You know, we start charging you the minute we leave the yard. You know, so that's always open for, you know, well, you're going to drive to work anyways. But if it's, you know, say it's 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon, once they get the call and they drive from their home to their service yard to pick up the truck and then drive it to my site, basically they've been on the clock from the time that they started off to their job. And rightfully so, because it's off hours. But if it's during regular working hours, then that's negotiable. So those are some of the items that you're going to work through on these service level agreements and scope of works. Okay? Some advantages and disadvantages, lack of loyalty. Okay? Sometimes you're marching to a different agenda. Turnover is probably another one too that unfortunately we see a lot in regards to outsourcing. And sometimes the jobs may be only temporary until they find a more permanent job. Very good skilled individuals, but they want something that's going to provide maybe benefits. So they'll continue to work in with this firm. Then afterwards, they find a more permanent job with better benefits, and then they'll leave. Okay. One item that we include in our service level agreements is that the same technician. So we embed that right in our service level agreement and scope of works as contract requirement. So even if they have turnover, one of the requirements is that you need to train their replacement before you send them out to our site. That way they're not really impacting my resources and my labor pool by having them escorted around the site to get to know the site, okay, and the customers. Some of the advantages is, you know, fresh ideas, less liability. They burden all the liability in regards to training and PPE. That's their requirements, okay, their responsibility. Better operating efficiency in some cases because they're being what? They're operating on a profit margin. So the faster they can go in, repair it, and go to the next job site, okay, the higher margins that they're going to receive. Flexible sizing and staffing. If I downturn, I can also downsize my contract pool as well. Well, if it's in-house, it's a little bit more difficult to do. Okay, so again, just some advantages and disadvantages in outsourcing. Okay, and then this is just a real simple matrix, and just identifying the candidates. You know, 1, 2, 3. This is the competency area, and of course you're going to rate them. Okay, in regards to all this criteria, and then you score them. The one with the highest score obviously is going to be your top candidate. So this is your real simple rating ranking system that you would introduce. Considerations for contractor, determine the candidate compliance. Okay. Legal guidelines. Okay. Insurance, bonding, probably the most critical ones right here. Making sure that they're a licensed and bonded contractor, service provider. Okay. Primarily what? Liability issues. Okay. Keeping you basically to the point where as the owner, you're not liable for some of the damages that they may pursue. So some of the service requirements is that they've got to provide $1 million or multi-million-dollar, right, clause within their contract. That's in case that something accidentally happens and they shut the facility down. They're insured to where our insurance provider, okay, can be compensated for that particular loss. Okay. Also going to be considered for contractor safety and material handling on how they perform that, such as forklift training. Are the workmen and the technicians and personnel skilled in how to do that, how to operate a forklift, okay, pallet jack and so on. Sustainability, do they have a sustainability program? We look at that at General Dynamics, is what do you do with your recycled content material? Do you try to recycle that? Do you try to depackage as much as you can before it comes out to our site? Okay. And then provisions for barrier-free access, such as ADA, okay? And of course, equal employment opportunity related. You know, we don't want anything that's going to jeopardize. Whatever happens in regards to a contractor at our site, in many cases it's associated to our campus. So what we want to do is minimize that risk, minimize that liability. So background checks within all service providers mandatory, and that's done by our procurement organization. Okay, it's done by legal.
How far the background checks go?
Primarily, it's for felony checks, and I believe it goes back 5 years. Okay.
Do that within your firm, or do you have the outsourced company that?
We have the company actually perform that. So whenever they have a new technician reporting to the site, they usually provide their own background check on their own employee. That way it's not an item to where General Dynamics missed something. We basically leave it to the service provider, and then they provide everything to security and also to procurement. So that way it leaves all the risk and all the liability on the service provider or the contractor.
Are you giving your service providers like requirements for security clearances?
Yes. Some of our custodians are required to be cleared. Okay, and again, part of this, what Paul is mentioning, since we're a defense contractor, do some of our contractors required to be cleared, depending on what they're performing, the tasks that they're performing. Typically, a security clearance can take up to 18 months by the time that they do the full investigation and the background checks. So at one point, we had quite a few contractors that were basically top secret cleared. But now, if there's not a need to know, then basically we don't. And it's part of the Homeland Security Defense Act. We don't provide that anymore. We don't contain that anymore. So basically what we just provide is just a felony checks that they can actually work at our site with very minimal clearances when it comes to the DOD. Okay. Absolutely. That's why when we talk about we have a closed area, which could have, say, 20 engineers, and it's a secured room, every time a janitor enters that or somebody changing a light bulb, that entire area shuts down just for that sake, because they're escorted and watched as they perform their tasks. That's why a lot of the tasks and schedules are done during off hours when you only have one individual escorting them versus affecting the other 20, because there's productivity issues that also contain in that. They can't work at anything while somebody else is there. So that's just the pros and cons of working in a defense campus, a secured campus. Good question, though. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Service level factors, some of those could be the scope of work and change control. Change orders, who's going to review those and approve those? Who's going to validate those? Okay. And change orders can come anywhere from fuel adjustment. When gas prices were going up, we had fuel adjustments coming in, considered a change order. We're just passing the cost on through our customer. And those particular other items could be materials. Having a difficulty on gathering or even procuring materials, additional costs, freight, increases in airfare, air fuel, all those could be considered change orders and change control. Working beyond the specifications would be another component. Nothing's better than to visibly see a contractor come through and they complete a job and you see them completely wiping everything down, picking up all their trash like they've never been there. In a facilities organization, it's kind of very unique for us to see that. But it's probably one of the best, I would say, compliments that you could provide the contractor by acknowledging them for that. I mean, most of the time when you're done at the construction site, you pack everything you got and you leave. In this particular here, though, when they actually spend the extra time, they exceed your expectations. And then I'm a true believer that you also need to acknowledge the contractor for doing those duties, those additional duties. Okay. And then consequences for subpar performance. Maybe they didn't do it. So some of the consequences could be you're given a verbal, and a second infraction is you're given a written, and then you're given a final written. Okay, so say it's janitorial. I could have 3 infractions before I actually give them their notice to terminate. But if it's my data center, I may not be able to afford 3 infractions. So it may be one is a written, and then the next one is a formal. So again, depending on the severity, okay, of the service.